So, welcome to Real Talk with the one and only Tara. So, I'm mixing it up. We've done a few of these AI chats and stuff like this, but obviously, episode 5, we did a two-part, and there was a bit of personal information and chat, shall we say. So, I wanted to sort of lean into that a little bit and just change it up and see what you like, what you don't like, sort of, because obviously it's still early days. So I am doing some series of podcasts. We're going to change it up. I'm going to do the one series and see what you all think about that one series and go from there. But this first series, which is starting at episode 6, is called The Unspoken Truths. So this is going to be a raw and emotional look at things like that people don't really talk about much. So sort of mental health, trauma, the hidden parts of motherhood and stuff. So this is all things that is so massively personal to me, that I want to talk about and just sort of, just be real with you all, hence Real Talk with Cara. So, so I just thought, why not dive into something a bit different for the next part and see where we go with that. So this one, I am going to warn you now. So this one is it's a raw one, so we're getting a little bit serious here. It's a bit of a raw one, and it's a very personal episode for me. It's not graphic, and I'm not going to go into sort of a lot of details or anything like that, but I am going to keep it really honest with you, and I'm going to be really sort of like as honest as I can be, like obviously within reason, YouTube and all that. But it, I'm going to give you a trigger warning. It is about assault, and it is sort of speaking about sort of the shame and that follows and stuff like that, and sort of how I just reclaimed it back after. So yeah, let's jump in. So again, I'm going to keep it like as light as I can, but obviously it's a serious sort of topic. So yeah, it's just one of those really. So we'll get there. We'll talk about it. I lost my train of thought because something beeped up and I've not seen it before. Sorry, I do apologise. Right, so basically, again, just I'm not going to go into details, but sort of I'm going to focus on more sort of how it felt and think. Obviously, I'm sure you can use your imagination to work out what's going on. But when I was 18, so I sort of started drinking, and I was sort of getting out there, being a bit rebellious, sort of doing all of that sort of like stuff that you do when you're 18. Let's face it, a lot of people get out and sort of explore more and make bad decisions and stuff like that. But unfortunately, this wasn't entirely a bad decision on my part, which I found out after. But I was at a friend's house, or supposedly a friend's house, and her dad was teetotal, didn't drink. But I remember with sort of growing up, and she had a lot of complaints about him. He probably wasn't the best dad going. I remember that. And it was like, but there's nothing to say that he was bad or like, anything to worry about or be concerned about. So it wasn't sort of like I was more than content staying over at hers, and I in fact did most weekends. and we used to a lot of the time just get drunk in the house while he would be in his office downstairs working or whatnot, or we'd be working away, so it'd pretty much just be us in the house, so pretty much doing what we got to do. But this one night, he was pretty much in with us. So you got to remember, there was at the time there was myself, my friend whose dad it was, another friend, and her brother. Um, so there was four of us there. Well, three young girls, one being his daughter, and then obviously his younger son as well. Um, and this night in particular, like I said, he sort of drinking with us, and he actually invited a friend over. So he's teetotal. He like her dad was completely teetotal, and his friend wasn't. He was drinking. And you got to remember, these were like grown men in their 40s at the time, and they're in a room with one daughter and two of the daughter's friends that are all 18. So obviously, in hindsight, you look at that now, and I just remember at the time, like, knowing deep down something was off, but I was so young and naive, like, I didn't really understand why that was off, or I didn't understand sort of how, when as an adult now looking back at it, like obviously how unsavory that situation is from an outside perspective. And I didn't really think nothing of it. Obviously, like I mentioned, I'm not going into details, but um her it was an assault with his friend. It wasn't her dad, it was the drunk friend. um but I remember being a blackout drunk. I was completely like, my memories of that night are sort of clips, just clippets, not a lot. I was very, very drunk. There is a big chunk of the night that I don't remember, and I remember because of being that drunk as well, there was parts that I did remember where I really did doubt my own memory, and I sort of felt really confused by that. I remember like people telling me sort of like their events of what happened, but because they're all drunk as well, all their events were slightly different, and so it was like it's just fueling that sort of doubt of my own memory of events as well, or at least what I could remember. Um, and I sort of remember um, like just blaming myself massively as well and thinking it was me. And I remember a lot of what we know now to be victim blaming, where it was very much even like people I trusted really closely at the time, like were basically it was my fault. I was the one that was too drunk. Um, I'm the one that, like, the typical phase is that, like, again, I don't want to go into detail, but the typical things that do happen when people like sort of victim blame and that. It's like, you're asking for it sort of thing, all of that sort of thing. And this was literally like, this was my friend who was the daughter. This was the other friend who was there did not say anything about it, and even years later didn't. She came well out of it, did not have an opinion, did not talk about it, pretended it didn't happen, sort of thing. Never brought it up once to me, never said anything. The the there was a friend that took me to report afterwards that I then like found out. um, didn't believe me, even though she was supporting me in the moment. She didn't actually believe me, and I found out after, like, a lot of people felt the same way, and they genuinely thought, because of how I was perceived and how I was at that age, pretty much everyone thought it was something that I agreed to, which was completely and utterly, like, when I say I was blackout drunk, I couldn't even function. Like, I was like absolutely like paralytic. I was paralytic. You can't even say someone in that state wasn't paralytic. I was completely paralytic. But obviously, a lot of people that I trusted, and even at the time, where if it didn't come out as that, like, I later found out down the line that that was what they thought and that they didn't believe that, and I found that incredibly hard and difficult to deal with. Sorry, I don't normally pause, but my darling child's coming wanting dinner. I've got to do dinner in a minute, but I'm going to finish this first. Um, uh, so basically, what I was saying was, like, I just remember this whole feeling of, um, I don't know, like a really disheartening feeling, because it's like in something that was so traumatic for me that I was already struggling to understand and sort of appreciate I'm not in a room for, and trying to understand, and in a condition where I was very vulnerable, and it made it a whole lot more confusing. I then had people all around me, like, sort of confirming that I'm in the wrong and this has happened because of me, and sort of, and essentially normalising it, if anything, like, as if nothing wrong did happen. Um, and I remember the reactions of most people, like the silence from one friend, the complete denial from the daughter of sort of think of who was there. Um, and in particular, I remember her attempting to sort of emotionally blackmail me by that this was something I was already ashamed of, and sort of didn't understand. And even though I kind of knew deep down it was wrong, which was why I attempted to report it, I was still highly ashamed of it and absolutely confused as if I was doing the right thing or not. And she knew I had a rocky relationship with my parents. She knew that I kept a lot from my parents because I wasn't on that level with my parents, and she did attempt to sort of emotionally blackmail me by threatening to tell my parents. And because I was already being made to feel like this was my fault anyway, like I caused this is why that happened, I didn't want to be going to my parents explaining, like, why I'd caused that to happen, sort of thing. And that pretty much completely shut it down, from that point on, and sort of in my naive younger head pretty much confirmed that, yeah, it was me, I'm in the wrong. um so, like, I mean, I minimised it for years, absolutely years. I think it's only been recently, bear in mind that happened when I was 18. I'm now 33, and it's only been in the last year I think there's been moments leading up to this last year where it's sort of I've been able to sort of go, yeah, that's what it is when I see things and that. But it always comes, but it was down to therapy, a lot of therapy, that really did sort of make me come away from that was a bad night, bad experience, and actually call it out for what it was. Um, like I mean, I've had no one to tell that to, but for me, I think for me myself, recognizing that myself was like a huge thing, and it's like I mean, it's so unfair because I just carried around guilt, a lot of guilt, thinking it was me. I was guilty about the way that I used to behave at the time. I was guilty about how I portrayed myself at the time. I felt guilty that I got my friend's dad's friend into some sort of trouble because he got a wife and kids and everything as well. Um, or I think he did. I don't know if he did actually. There was something though. I remember there being something. And I remember being like really upset because they had to go, like obviously police had to go to my friend's house, and I remember the brother like making um a very angry Facebook post about the fact that that was happening, where he very clearly blamed me and um, called me some certain words and whatever that was. And I remember like a lot of shame, really upset. Like my world shrunk massively at that point. Like I went from having all these people surrounding me that I thought I could trust, um, to not being able to trust anyone, and it wasn't even like sort of my friend and her dad and that sort of betrayal that hit hardest. I think it was everyone, even people not involved at the time, instantly going, "This is your fault," essentially, and you're to blame, and you're in the wrong, and that's not what it's not what you're saying it is. And I think it was all these people doing that, and saying that they didn't believe me and various things. I think that was what hit the hardest, if I'm quite honest. I mean, I feel quite emotional now, like, not gonna cry sort of thing, but I can feel the emotions now because I think that was the bit that really that was the trauma, I'd say, not the actual assault. The trauma was that world shrinking and realised that even when you put all of your trust into someone, it can be broke like that. And when you're expected to be supported and you're not being supported, it was a very hard lesson, and it was a lesson I carried all the way through life, and I still do. Um, and like, I mean, the actual assault itself, I just remember thinking, "Oh, this is my fault." You know, like after I'm being told it, it's like I was the drunk one. I obviously made it easy. I froze the sort of thing and couldn't shout out and couldn't get help. Um, so because I couldn't do that, how's anyone gonna know? Like, it's my word against his. Like, it's like in their perspective, it's like I've kind of froze, so I must be okay. Um, and I just it I like it brought up a lot of self hatred, I think. And I think that is something that I didn't really touch upon until sort of late therapy. Um, I definitely did. And like obviously initially I knew it weren't right, so I tried to report it. And I remember like that changing with what everyone was saying and sort of how my circle shrunk and all of that and my views, and I did blame myself a lot after that. And I mean, I just got to the point where I suppressed it. I wouldn't talk about it. Even with myself, I kind of just pretended it didn't happen. Just a bad night. One of those nights I don't need to remember. It, that sort of thing, and it just got buried. It got buried. Um, I mean, I think it all changed, and I think there was a definite turning point. Definitely when I became a mum. Um, was sort of, especially as my daughter started getting older, and sort of being able to sort of put myself in her shoes or her in my shoes, and me sitting there going, oh, but if she was in a room with two of her so-called best friends and two men over twice their age, like, that's weird. Like, that's not right. And I think it was that really did start sinking in. And I was like, well, I would, like, God forbid it happened, but I wouldn't blame her. Like, so why did I blame me? Why did I think it was me? I mean, because I was told that. But I think it definitely helped, especially having a daughter. It was definitely one of those light bulb moments where it was really like it really dawned on me. I think there was a few other things leading up to that as well, like over the years, where it was like sort of like um things you'd see on TV, like documentaries or anything like that, where it was similar circumstances, and the dots start connecting, and it's like you start realizing, like in sort of your adult mind, what actually was happening at the time. Um, and I did, and like I said, a lot of therapy as well later, sort of learning not to internalize things and seeing others' actions as theirs and not mine made a huge difference as well. And I started to see it really clearly, and I started to realise this was an assault on me. I was not in the right wrong, no matter what happened, no matter whether I was drunk, whether like anything, like with no matter what all those people around me said at the time, like, and how they tried to blame me, like he assaulted, end of, it was wrong, full stop. There was no, like, there is no person on this planet that looks at a paralytic young girl and thinks that that situation was not assault. And it's like, and now obviously in adulthood, that's something you see, like with a lot of work and a lot of life changes, like my daughter and that. Um, but yeah, and I think that is when the shame and it sort of started turning to anger, essentially, and when I started gaining my power back over the event, because it was like that sort of like, once I knew it wasn't my fault, I was then allowed to be angry at not only him, all of those people who, thank God, I actually don't have any contact with anymore. I mean, I did stay in contact with a lot of them even after they did things. And I remember being pregnant with my eldest, and the daughter who I was friends with, she visited, and so I still knew her up to my pregnancy with my eldest, but I can say now very proudly that I am, and even the others I was friends with up until recent years. And I can say very happily now that I am not friends with any for other reasons, but like coming to terms with this, I'm happy that I'm not friends with them because none of them but did the right thing then, and there are reasons leading up to this that where they certainly haven't been friends in the way that friends should be as well. So I was angry at all of them. I think I was also a little bit angry at myself because of how long I allowed myself to believe that lie and believe that I was the issue. Um, but it was powerful. It gave me control back. It was something that I could own. It was my story to then tell, because up until then it was essentially everyone else's story, their version of events, what they thought happened. But that's not the case. That was my reality. That is my story to tell. They can tell their own story about it. It doesn't mean my story has to follow theirs. I think so. That's when I took that back and I gave my story its own point of view back, which I think was absolutely such a power move for me, and it allowed me to step into my own a lot as well. And um, like I said, I stopped needing others, and like I said, I'm not friends with any of them now. Like I kept them by because I thought I needed them, and now I'm able to go, actually, I really don't need you. I'm good with myself, and I believe me. I know what happened. I know how I felt. I was there. I, that happened to me. That is my story to tell, sort of thing. So definitely a powerful thing to come to realise, I think. But it 100% changed me, like for the better. Like I know it seems a bit cliche to say, like you know, like things like things happen to make you a better person, but essentially it did. Like it's taught me in therapy, obviously not solely by self, but with everything else as well. It's really helped me. It's been a part of my journey in learning to set clearer boundaries with not only other people but myself as well. It's definitely made me so much more aware for my own kids, their safety and their self-worth as well. And for that, like, I'm deeply appreciative of that awful experience, as weird as that sounds. Um, and I definitely parent differently. Like especially around like things like consent, bodies, trust. Like I really do try and like really make that a big thing. Like especially with my son, like because I don't want my son, like I see things like little things like where he'll push boundaries with his sister, and it's like, and that's something I step in because I think it's easy to miss if you haven't lived through something so horrific. It's easy to miss these little signs, like that's where consent and stuff starts essentially. um and essentially it's helped me like seeing people. Like I can see, like if anyone tries to confide in me, I can spot their shame and stuff like that, because it's something I've been through. It's something I can share and help and advise, and you know, all of that, which is like, is again, as cliche as it is, it's a silver lining. And definitely, I let go of the me that felt like I had to be silenced and I had to believe their stories. And as you can see now, I'm happy to share my version of events, my story, how I saw it, and I'm not gonna keep quiet now for other people's comfort. If they don't like it, that's on them at the end of the day. If they're uncomfortable with it, that's them who's uncomfortable with it. Like, my story is my story to share at the end of the day. So, in final words, and this has gone on a bit longer than normal, I normally do 20-minute snippets and we're on 30 minutes. But for final words, like, on a serious note though, if you are holding guilt over something that happened to you, please try and step out and look at what happened to you and see that it's not your fault. Put yourself in someone else's shoes and imagine it's someone else, and think about what you'd think of them, because you definitely wouldn't think it's their fault. And unfortunately, if you have gone through such an awful thing, as sad as it is, you survived it, and you're here, and you can take that story and you can do so much good with it, even if it is just creating a better generation of people when you have your own children, and teaching them these basic boundaries yourself. And don't forget, you really do deserve to be safe, respected, and have your full voice heard. Like, you really don't need to stay quiet. I mean, saying this out loud is a huge part of healing for me. It feels so amazing being able to just say it, and say it out loud, and know that it's my truth and it happened to me, and regardless of what anyone else thinks. So I hope that hearing it, and I'm assuming you've caught on to sort of the events that I'm talking about, but I hope that if hearing this helps you heal a little too. And yeah, good. Sorry to be a downer. I mean, I think it's important though, these type of sort of videos and sort of podcasts and stories and whatever it be. I think they're so important, and I think they offer such a valuable thing for people, especially in healing and stuff like that. So even though it's not my most amazing topic to talk about, and it's not as fun as the others have been, I think it's severely important, and I hope you benefited from it. And please reach out to someone you trust if anything has happened, or even if it's just therapy. Reach out, start healing. It will make such a difference. But thank you once again for joining Real Talk with Tara. And again, I am sorry it's a bit of a serious topic. I do apologise. But we're gonna try this series out, and we're gonna see if you enjoy this series, and if you enjoy this sort of thing. I don't know what it is, this sort of thing. Let me know if you do in the comments. Let me know what else you want to hear, if anything. And until next time, I shall see you soon. Bye.